Welcome to Tales of Black. I'm Makeda. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment. We're always listening.
Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive into the astonishing and often overlooked corners of history.
It's great to be diving in again.
Have you ever paused to consider how some of the most incredible chapters of our past seem to just vanish? Not just through, the slow erosion of time, but through deliberate, calculated design.
Yeah, absolutely. History being actively shaped or maybe unshaped.
Exactly. We're talking about powerful stories, monumental achievements, entire periods of history maybe intentionally erased from the official record, silenced for political or ideological reasons.
It happens more than we probably realize.
And today, we're going all the way back to ancient Egypt, a civilization whose history spans millennia, right? To uncover one of its most fascinating yet systematically forgotten periods.
It's a profound thought, isn't it? History is never simply a neutral recounting of events. It's a narrative.
Right.
It's constantly being shaped and reshaped by those in power, by the victors, by prevailing ideologies. What gets remembered, what gets celebrated, and crucially, what gets deliberately forgotten, often tells us as much about the present moment, the time when that history is being written or revised, as it does about the actual past itself.
That's a really important point.
And the story we're about to explore today is a prime, really compelling example of this deliberate crafting and uncrafting of memory.
That's precisely it.
Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the truly incredible and, like you said, often overlooked saga of the 25th dynasty of Egypt. These were a line of powerful pharaohs who originated not from the familiar Nile Delta or Thebes, but from the kingdom of Kush.
Way south, yeah. Modern-day Sudan, basically.
A sophisticated and ancient civilization there. They're perhaps most evocatively known as the Black Pharaohs.
That's the term you often hear, yeah.
The central paradox we're diving into today is this. How could a dynasty of such immense power and cultural achievement, a dynasty that actually unified the entire Nile Valley in a way not seen for centuries.
Right, a huge accomplishment.
How could they be systematically erased from the historical record? Why would their monuments be defaced, their names chiseled out of king lists, almost as if they never existed?
It's a fascinating historical mystery. To unravel it, we've pulled together a pretty interesting stack of sources for this deep dive.
What are we looking at?
We've got cutting-edge academic articles, some really detailed archaeological research papers, and meticulous analyses of ancient records like stele and inscriptions.
Okay.
Our goal is to carefully reconstruct their true history, to celebrate their monumental achievements because they were significant, and most importantly, to investigate the powerful, intentional campaign of damnatio memoria.
Damnatio memoria, Latin, right?
Yeah, it means condemnation of memory. It was a real practice aimed at obliterating their entire legacy, both the physical stuff and the textual records.
Wow. And why does this matter to you, our listener, here and now? Because this isn't merely some dusty ancient history lesson.
Not at all.
It's a compelling, really timeless case study in power dynamics, the intricate construction of identity, and the profound way history itself is shaped and reshaped by those in control.
Definitely. It offers surprising insights into a vibrant, interconnected ancient world that was far more complex, diverse, and fluid than many traditional narratives often portray.
It really reminds us that knowledge is power, right? And controlling the historical narrative can be the ultimate form of control.
Absolutely.
So let's begin our journey south to the very origins of these remarkable pharaohs.
The southern crucible origins of the Kushite kingdom.
Okay, so to truly understand the 25th dynasty and why they emerged as such a powerful force, we can't just start with their dramatic arrival in Egypt. That's sort of jumping into the middle of the story.
Exactly. You need the backstory. We need to go much further back in time and much further south to their homeland. Nubia, yeah. Located in what is today modern-day northern Sudan. And it's absolutely crucial to understand this region not as some, obscure footnote to Egyptian history.
Which is how it's often treated, unfortunately.
It is, but it was actually a dynamic, independent civilization with its own deep, rich history and a very distinct identity that predates much of what we think of as ancient Egypt.
So Nubian civilization goes way back.
Oh, way back. The roots of organized kingdoms in Nubia stretch back millennia, long, long before any Kushite pharaoh ever sat on the throne of Egypt. The earliest and perhaps one of the most remarkable urban civilizations in all of sub-Saharan Africa was the Kingdom of Kerma.
Kerma, got it. When are we talking?
Flourished from around, say, 2500 to 1500 BCE. And this was no small tribal settlement. We're talking a powerful populous state.
Wow.
Its capital city, also called Kerma, was a vast urban center, a true metropolis of its time.
It was dominated by these monumental mud brick structures, right? The defufas.
That's right, the defufas. These weren't just buildings. They were imposing structures, multi-story, some reaching up to maybe 60 feet high.
Incredible. What were they for?
Temples, administrative centers. They're a clear testament to organized labor and a pretty sophisticated society.
And they weren't just capable of building on a massive scale, were they? Their technology, their art.
Truly incredible. Our sources highlight, for example, their exquisite handmade pottery.
I've seen pictures. It looks amazing.
It is incredibly thin, almost eggshell-like in its delicacy, often featuring these beautiful burnished black and red surfaces. It shows a truly high level of skill and aesthetic refinement.
So these weren't just simple utilitarian pots.
No, they were works of art, highly prized for their beauty and craftsmanship.
What does that tell us about the society that produced them? I mean, beyond just good potters.
That's an excellent question because it tells us a tremendous amount. Such high-quality specialized craftsmanship points directly to a society with significant social stratification.
Meaning
You had artisans who could dedicate themselves fully to their craft, supported by a surplus of resources from farming or trade. It also indicates a sophisticated trade network.
makes sense.
So, yeah, the pottery isn't just beautiful, it's a powerful archaeological indicator of Kerma's economic prosperity and social complexity.
Okay, so a complex society.
Yeah.
What was their relationship like with Egypt to the north?
Well, that was complex too. Marked by both extensive commercial ties, Egypt was always fascinated by Nubia's wealth.
Gold, ivory.
Exactly. Gold, ivory, ebony, exotic animals, they wanted access. But it was also marked by frequent, often violent conflict.
Competition over resources, trade routes.
Precisely. And this competition eventually led to Egypt's conquest of Kush during their expansionist New Kingdom period around 1504 BCE. Pharaohs like Thutmose, I led the charge.
Right, so for nearly 500 years, Nubia effectively became an Egyptian colony.
Pretty much. Ruled by a high-ranking official, the Viceroy of Kush.
And this period led to a profound Egyptianization of the Nubian elite, right?
Yeah.
They adopted Egyptian customs, religion, language.
Even names. Yes, a lot of cultural absorption. But, and this is key, it wasn't a complete cultural erasure. Native Nubian traditions persisted.
So it created a kind of hybrid culture.
Exactly, a unique blend. They absorbed Egyptian elements, but they always maintained their core identity. And that blend became incredibly important later on.
How so?
Well, fast forward to the collapse of Egypt's formidable New Kingdom, around 1069 BCE. This created a power vacuum throughout the region, including in Nubia.
Okay, so Egypt weakens.
Right. And as Egypt's central authority waned, Kushite chieftains, drawing on both their indigenous traditions and their deep understanding of Egyptian culture from those centuries of contact,
They saw their chance.
they seized the opportunity to reassert their independence. And from this period of renewed autonomy, a new, powerful native kingdom emerged,
Centered where?
centered around the city of Napata, located strategically near the fourth cataract of the Nile.
Napata. Okay.
This city swiftly grew to become both a political capital and a major religious hub for the ascendant Kushites.
And what's truly fascinating from what I've read is how these new Kushite kings, rather than rejecting all that Egyptian influence,
Or it's the opposite.
they actively adopted pharaonic symbols and traditions.
Yes. They saw themselves not just as independent rulers, but as the legitimate, divinely appointed successors to the great New Kingdom rulers of Egypt.
That's a bold claim.
It was. And their devotion to the Egyptian god Amun in particular became absolutely central to their ideology and their claim to power.
Amun, the king of the gods and thieves.
Exactly. They established a massive cultic center at Jebel Barkal. It's this striking, flat-topped sandstone mountain.
I've seen images. It's very distinctive.
It is. They believed it was Amun's southern abode, so it became their powerful sacred counterpart to the sprawling Karnak temple complex in Thebes.
A southern Karnak, in a way.
In a sense, yeah, an ideological anchor for their power.
So while Kush is consolidating his power, forging this unique hybrid identity,
Yeah.
what's happening back in Egypt?
Well, Egypt itself was in a prolonged and often chaotic state of decline. Historians call it the Third Intermediate Period.
Right. Not exactly a golden age.
Far from it. Central authority had completely collapsed. Northern Egypt was fractured, ruled by a succession of competing Libyan dynasties, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th dynasties.
Constantly fighting each other.
Pretty much. Embroiled in petty civil wars. Meanwhile, southern Egypt was basically an autonomous theocracy, largely controlled by the immensely powerful high priests of Amun at Thebes.
So the priests held the real power in the south.
They held religious and significant political authority, yeah.
So you have this stark contrast. A unified rising Kush, looking back to Egypt's past glories, trying to emulate its golden age.
While Egypt itself is fragmented, weak, and highly vulnerable.
That context is absolutely key to understanding the Kushite conquest, isn't it? Because it wasn't just about military ambition for them, it was something deeper.
It was not at all just about land grabbing. The driving force behind their eventual move into Egypt was a profound and deeply held belief that they were the true, authentic protectors of Egyptian religion and culture.
Wow, so they saw themselves as saviors.
Pretty much. They didn't view themselves as mere foreign invaders coming to plunder. Instead, they truly believed they had a divine mission, a sacred calling from Amun himself.
A mission to do what?
To reunify the two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt. To restore Mat.
Meant cosmic order, justice, truth, that core Egyptian concept.
Exactly. Restore Mat to a land they saw as weakened, corrupted, and fractured by what they considered illegitimate and divisive rulers, these Libyan kings.
So this powerful ideology framed their conquest. How?
As nothing less than a crusade for liberation and renaissance, a return to true Egyptian values and glory.
That's brilliant framing.
It was a powerful justification, wasn't it? It transformed what was clearly a military expansion into a deeply sacred duty, designed to appeal to the very Egyptian populace, especially the priesthood that they sought to rule.
Piye, the pious conqueror uniting the two lands.
And the man who truly realized this imperial transformation for Kush, the founder of the illustrious 25th dynasty, was Pharaoh Piye.
Piye, sometimes spelled Pianki, reigned from approximately 744 down to 714 BCE.
His campaign was a remarkable feat, wasn't it? Not just militarily, but also as a masterclass in ideological propaganda.
Absolutely, which he brilliantly immortalized on his famous victory stele.
We have to talk about that stele. But first, the campaign itself. When did he make his move?
Piye launched his full-scale invasion of Egypt around the 20th year of his reign, so he'd been consolidating power in Kush for almost 2 decades.
What was the trigger?
The stated motivation was to counter the southward expansion of Tefnach.
Tefnach, he was one of the Libyan chiefs.
Yeah, from Sais in the Delta. He was trying to unify Lower Egypt under his own rule and was starting to push south, encroaching on the Kushite sphere of influence in Upper Egypt.
So Piye saw this as a direct threat.
A threat to the order that he believed Amun had ordained, yes.
And how did the campaign unfold? Was it a long slog?
Actually, remarkably efficient. Piye led his armies northward with incredible precision and strategic brilliance. He waged a methodical campaign along the Nile.
Taking key cities.
Methodically securing cities and river ports, yes. He achieved a decisive victory at Heracleopolis. Then he besieged and successfully captured Hermopolis.
Hermopolis was important, right? King Nimlot there.
Very important. And Nimlot had actually been an ally, but then switched sides to Tefnach. Piye forced him into a humiliating surrender.
Didn't Nimlot try to appease him with horses?
He did. The accounts say Nimlot offered gold, precious stones, and crucially, his finest horses, knowing Piye's great love for them.
We'll come back to the horses. So after Hermopolis,
The march culminated in the daring capture of Memphis.
Memphis, the ancient capital, the administrative heart of Egypt, huge symbolic value.
Exactly. He took it after a swift and decisive assault. And once Memphis fell, the remaining Delta kings and chieftains.
It just folded.
Pretty much. I put the second, Masork on the fourth. They quickly submitted to his authority. It was a rapid and profoundly decisive campaign. Military might combined with sharp political acumen.
Okay, so victory achieved. Then comes the propaganda part. The victory stele.
Right. To commemorate this monumental triumph, Piye had this truly enormous granite stele erected at the Amun Temple in Jebel Barkal.
Back in the Kushite heartland.
Yes, the heart of their religious devotion. It was discovered in 1862 by Auguste Mariette, and it's our primary source for the campaign. It's extraordinary Piye's own voice, his justification.
Describe it for us. What did it look like?
Imagine standing before it, a dark granite slab standing about 1.8 meters tall, almost 6 feet. densely inscribed with classical Middle Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Classical Middle Egyptian, why that specific style?
That was an accident. It was a deliberate, conscious choice. He wanted to evoke the golden age of Egyptian literature and royal power.
Ah, reinforcing his legitimacy.
Precisely. Placing him firmly within the grand traditions of pharaonic rule. He was essentially saying, I am not just a conqueror, I am a restorer of true Egyptian heritage.
And the text itself, what story does it tell?
Well, the narrative is fascinating. It's a masterwork of ancient propaganda, really. It portrays Piye's campaign not as a brutal conquest, but as a holy war, divinely sanctioned by Amun.
So he's the chosen one.
He's depicted as incredibly devout, favored by Amun to restore Maat to Egypt. He even famously commanded his soldiers to ritually purify themselves before battle, abstain from meat, bathe in the Nile.
Wow.
And he emphasized noble conduct, respecting Egyptian religious sites during the advance. This wasn't just piety for piety's sake.
It was strategic.
Absolutely. A shrewd propaganda strategy designed to win over the influential Amun priesthood at Thebes and the broader Egyptian populace, legitimizing his rule as divinely sanctioned and culturally respectful. Savior, not invader.
And the top part, the lunette, the picture.
Yes, the visual power there is particularly striking. It shows Piye enthroned, radiating power, receiving the submission of the defeated Delta kings.
But there's a catch with Tefnut, his main enemy.
There is, a crucial telling detail. Tefnut is notably excluded from a direct audience. He's shown submitting from afar, outside the inner circle, almost like he's not worthy to approach Piye directly. Others, like Nimlot and Osorkon V, are shown literally kissing the ground at Piye's feet. Reinforces his absolute dominion.
And here's where it gets really interesting, foreshadowing what comes later. Piye's own image on the stele.
It was later partially chiseled away. Specifically his face and crown, the symbols of his kingship, but not his body.
An act of damnatio memoriae on his own victory monument. Incredible.
It's a critical piece of evidence for the erasure campaign we'll discuss.
Yeah.
A powerful act of historical defiance aimed right back at him.
Beyond the politics, does the stele tell us anything about Piye as a person?
It really does, surprisingly. It offers insights into his unique character, which was rather uncommon for a conqueror of that era.
Like what?
Well, he expressed a strong disdain for unnecessary killing, showed remarkable compassion for his defeated enemies, even sparing some who defied him.
And the horses. You mentioned he loved horses.
He did. A truly intriguing detail. He was an ardent horse lover. He rebuked Nimlot not just for rebellion, but apparently for letting his horses starve during the siege. Yes, and he was so fond of his own horses that he had 8 of his beloved steeds buried near his own pyramid in the royal necropolis at El-Kuru.
Burying horses like royalty. That's amazing.
It is. It contrasts so sharply with the brutal accounts we have from contemporary Assyrian conquerors. It makes Piye stand out as a ruler with a distinct moral code, maybe even a surprising humanity.
That's such a striking detail, isn't it? A conqueror who cared deeply about animal welfare. What do you think this reveals? Kushite values, maybe? Or just Piye himself?
It could be both. It certainly points to a different kind of leadership, perhaps rooted more in their spiritual beliefs, their self-perception as restorers of Maat.
Order and purity extending to animals.
Perhaps. While other empires glorified brutality, Piye's piety seemed to extend to a respect for life. It speaks volumes about their internal philosophy, or at least his.
So after this massive victory, what did Piye do? Did he move to Memphis, rule from Egypt?
Actually, no. He made a rather unusual decision for an Egyptian pharaoh. He returned to his capital, Napata, in Nubia.
Really? He just went home?
Seemingly content to rule his newly unified empire from the south. While he formally established the 25th dynasty, the full administrative consolidation of the north, the day-to-day governance, was largely entrusted to his successors.
Shabaka and Shabitku.
Exactly. They would reside in Egypt. But Piye's accomplishment was profound. Unifying the entire Nile Valley, Delta to deep Nubia, under single rule for the first time in centuries. An era of stability.
And he didn't just unify politically, he kicked off an architectural revival too.
He did. He initiated a significant revival, setting a powerful precedent. He began construction of the first pyramid at the royal necropolis in El-Kuru, near Napata, for his own burial.
Pyramids, like an old kingdom.
Exactly. This was a hugely powerful ideological statement, reviving a royal burial tradition abandoned by Egyptian pharaohs for nearly 1,000 years.
So he's visually linking himself to Egypt's golden age.
Directly, reinforcing his claim as a true restorer of Egyptian greatness and a legitimate successor to its earliest, most iconic pharaohs. A conscious effort to restore grandeur and continuity.
Taharqa, the great zenith of power and architectural grandeur.
If Piye laid the foundation, then the reign of Pharaoh Taharqa from about 690 to 664 BCE truly marked the undisputed zenith of the 25th dynasty's power, its prosperity, and its cultural achievement.
Taharqa. He's probably the most famous of the Kushite pharaohs, right?
Arguably, yes. Under his powerful rule, the Kushite Empire reached its maximum extent. Stretched from the confluence of the Blue and White Niles near modern Khartoum,
Way down south.
all the way north through Egypt to the very borders of the Levant in Asia. A vast territory.
And was it a peaceful reign? Stable?
For a significant part of it, yes. Ancient records, including his own royal inscriptions, describe a period of remarkable peace and immense prosperity.
What fueled that?
It was aided significantly by exceptionally high Nile floods, which meant abundant harvests. Plus, they seem to have had a highly efficient, centralized administration managing this huge area.
So, stability, wealth, the perfect conditions for building big.
Exactly. It was within this context that Taharqa embarked on one of the most ambitious and grand building programs in the entire history of the Nile Valley. Truly massive.
His architectural ambition was really something else, wasn't it? Unrivaled not just within his dynasty, but maybe compared to many pharaohs, and across the whole empire.
Spanning across both Egypt and his Nubian homeland. And he wasn't just constructing new monuments. A huge part of it was undertaking extensive restoration and expansion of existing temples.
Especially temples to Amun.
Particularly those dedicated to Amun, yes. This demonstrated his profound piety, but it also further solidified his dynasty's legitimacy as the rightful inheritors and protectors of Egyptian religious traditions.
Cultivating that image of the benevolent, powerful, God-guided ruler.
Precisely. Let's delve into some of his major projects because they really illustrate the astonishing scale of his vision.
Okay, where did he build?
Let's start at Karnak,
Oh.
Thebes, the spiritual heart of Egypt for millennia. Taharqa left an absolutely indelible mark there.
What's his most famous structure at Karnak?
Undoubtedly, the majestic kiosk of Taharqa in the great court of the Amun Temple. It was this enormous open-air structure with towering papyrus bundle columns.
Only one column still stands fully, right? But it's huge.
It is huge. It was designed to impress, to facilitate public ceremonies, and visually reinforce his connection to Amun. He also made significant additions by the sacred lake, contributed to other chapels. He was very active at the core of Egyptian religion.
And what about back in Nubia, his homeland?
At Kawa, which was ancient Jamatan, Taharqa transformed what had been a relatively modest site into a major religious hub.
There's a story about that, isn't there, on one of his stele?
There is. It recounts how, as a young man, maybe even a prince, he passed through Kawa and saw the old brick temple dilapidated, covered in sand. He apparently made a vow that if he became pharaoh, he'd rebuild it grandly in stone.
And did he?
He did, true to his word. The new temple for Amun-Re constructed there was magnificent, and its exquisitely decorated sandstone chapel. Well, that's now a key artifact at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, a testament to the artistry of his reign.
Wow. What about Jebel Barkal, the Kushite holy mountain?
His dedication continued there. Jebel Barkal, Amun's southern abode, Taharqa continued the dynasty's ambitious program to develop it into a temple city that could rival even Karnak.
Seriously? Rival Karnak.
That seemed to be the ambition. He expanded existing temples, particularly the Mut Temple, added new structures, firmly establishing Jebel Barkal as the religious and ideological heart of the Kushite Empire.
And for his own tomb, did he build a pyramid like Piye?
He did, but he chose a new site entirely, Nuri, across the Nile from Jebel Barkal.
Okay.
And here, he constructed the largest pyramid in all of Nubia, base of about 52 square meters. A truly monumental structure. It established a whole new royal necropolis that would serve generations of his successors, really solidifying that Kushite pyramid tradition Piye started.
So his building program was incredibly expensive. Karnak, Kawa, Jebel Barkal, Nuri, but also other places.
Significant construction and restoration at Memphis, the old capital, Medinet Habu near Karnak, Tanis in the Delta, and numerous other locations across both Egypt and Nubia.
It really gives you a tangible sense of the vastness of his empire and his undisputed control over it. The logistics must have been staggering.
Beyond the sheer scale, though, the art of the 25th dynasty is fascinating. It represents this really sophisticated synthesis.
A blend of what?
A deep reverence for Egypt's venerable past, combined with a bold assertion of a new, distinct Kushite imperial identity.
Okay, let's break that down. The reverence for the past, you mean that classicism or archaism we talked about with Piye?
Exactly. It's a key element, often overlooked. The Kushite pharaohs deliberately revived art styles from Egypt's old, middle, and even new kingdoms.
So they're looking back centuries, even millennia. Why?
Think about it. This wasn't about a lack of creativity. It was a conscious, strategic act. They presented themselves as the true restorers of authentic Egyptian tradition.
A contrast to the previous Libyan dynasties.
A stark contrast. The Libyans hadn't invested in such grand programs. By being, in a sense, more Egyptian than the Egyptians, meticulously studying and replicating revered styles.
They solidified their legitimacy, especially in the eyes of their Egyptian subjects.
Precisely. It reveals a profound political savvy. They understood they couldn't just conquer, they had to embody the best of Egyptian tradition. It's a fascinating tightrope walk, cultural appropriation mixed with authentic self-expression.
But it wasn't just copying, right? You said they asserted their own identity too. How?
Right, this revival was far from blind imitation. Kushite artists skillfully integrated their own cultural traits and, importantly, their physical appearance into these traditional Egyptian art forms. Powerful statements about their dual identity.
What's the most obvious example?
The most prominent and unmistakable symbol of Kushite royalty was the double uraeus.
2 cobras instead of 1.
Exactly. Egyptian pharaohs traditionally wore a single cobra, the uraeus, on their crown, symbolizing rule over one unified land. The double uraeus symbolized the Kushite king's rule over both Egypt and Kush.
A visual declaration of their expanded empire. Clever.
A powerful visual badge of their unique power.
And they had their own distinctive headwear too.
They did. The Kushite royal cap. Kings of the 25th dynasty are frequently depicted wearing this distinctive, close-fitting cap, often adorned with the double uraeus.
And it seemed to replace the traditional Egyptian blue crown sometimes?
It often seems that way, yes. The kepresh, the blue crown, was a symbol of warfare and royal power. Choosing their own cap was likely a deliberate choice to maintain a distinct Kushite royal symbol. A subtle yet unmistakable statement of difference in authority, even while embracing other Egyptian traditions.
Okay, double uraeus, special cap. What else?
Perhaps most striking and impactful is their approach to realistic portraiture.
Realistic. How so? Different from other Egyptian art.
Yes. This period saw a significant shift towards realism. Sometimes art historians even call it brutal realism in royal portraiture.
Instead of the idealized faces.
Exactly. Instead of the idealized, often serene, generic faces common in many Egyptian dynasties, statues of Kushite kings, especially Taharqa, capture distinct, recognizably non-Egyptian facial features.
Like what features?
Fuller cheeks, strong, sometimes angular lines, a characteristic Nubian facial structure. The style, while maybe subtly drawing inspiration from some Middle Kingdom models known for realism, conveyed a sense of raw, individual power.
So it wasn't about looking like a god, but looking like this specific king.
Precisely. An unmistakable royal presence. It was about the specific, powerful individual on the throne.
Okay, so if we connect all these threads, the massive building, reviving classic styles, but adding Kushite symbols like the double uraeus and these realistic faces, what's the takeaway?
The takeaway is that the 25th dynasty's entire art and architectural program wasn't merely aesthetic or religious. It was a meticulously, carefully calibrated political tool.
Balancing what?
Balancing profound reverence for the Egyptian past, which granted them essential legitimacy, with bold Kushite innovation, which asserted a new, strong, and confident imperial identity. It was a visual language that spoke volumes about their power and their unique place in the ancient world.
Clash of Empires, the Kushite-Assyrian Wars.
Okay, so Taharqa's reign represents this peak of power, prosperity, this incredible cultural fusion. But peace and prosperity in the ancient Near East rarely lasted forever, did they?
No, unfortunately not. There was another rising superpower lurking in the Northeast, one with an insatiable appetite for expansion.
The Neo-Assyrian Empire.
Exactly, and this looming threat eventually led to an inevitable, brutal collision between these two giants. A clash for control over vital trade routes and strategic territories.
Especially in the Levant, right? That bridge between Africa and Asia.
Precisely. The Neo-Assyrian Empire, centered in northern Mesopotamia, was, without question, the dominant military power of the era.
What made them so formidable?
They had perfected the art of warfare, superior iron weaponry, devastating siege engines, and they commanded an incredibly efficient, highly disciplined, and often ruthlessly brutal army.
Not known for their gentleness.
Definitely not. Assyrian kings like Esarhaddon and his successor Ashurbanipal pursued a relentless policy of westward expansion. They aimed to bring all lands under their control. And this inevitably brought them into direct, violent conflict with Egypt's sphere of influence.
Which was now Kushite-controlled Egypt.
Correct.
And the Levant, Palestine, Phoenicia became the main proxy battleground.
It did. The Kushite pharaohs actively supported anti-Assyrian rebellions by numerous city-states there.
Why? To keep Assyria busy?
It was a calculated strategic move, yeah, designed to keep the powerful Assyrian enemy at bay, creating a vital buffer zone between Assyria and the Egyptian heartland.
But this policy, it backfired.
Ultimately, yes. Assyria viewed this as direct interference, a challenge to their dominance. It basically forced Assyria's hand and led to direct confrontations with Egypt itself.
So how did this conflict play out? Was it one big war?
No, it wasn't a single invasion. It was a prolonged, multi-generational conflict. A true century-long struggle, really, with significant ebbs and flows for both sides.
It started even before Taharqa.
Oh yeah. Kushite kings had already tangled with Assyria. Pharaoh Shibitku, Taharqa's predecessor, had supported a revolt against the mighty Assyrian king Sennacherib.
The one famous for besieging Jerusalem.
That's him. And even Piye himself had apparently sent forces to aid an uprising in Philistia. Taharqa simply continued this policy, actively stirring up anti-Assyrian revolts, perhaps seeing it as part of his mission to protect regional stability under Kushite-Egyptian influence.
So the stage was set for Esarhaddon, the Assyrian king reigning 681-669 BCE. He was determined to stop this Egyptian meddling.
Absolutely determined to neutralize the Egyptian threat. He saw it as a constant thorn in his side. He launched multiple campaigns against Taharqa.
And how did they go initially?
Well, here's something often overlooked. An initial Assyrian invasion, maybe around 674 or 673 BCE, actually ended in a major decisive defeat for the Assyrians.
Really? Taharqa beat them?
Taharqa's army beat them decisively. It was a stunning victory for the Kushites, pushing back the most powerful military machine of the age.
Wow. That must have boosted Taharqa's prestige enormously.
It certainly did. However, Esarhaddon was a relentless, a truly formidable ruler. He returned just a couple of years later, 671 BCE, with a much larger, re-equipped force, determined to crush Taharqa.
And this time?
This time he was successful. The Assyrian army swept through Egypt, capturing and thoroughly sacking Memphis, the capital.
Ouch. And didn't they capture Taharqa's family?
They did. A devastating blow. They seized many members of his royal family, including his wife and sons, and carried them off as hostages to Assyria, designed to break his spirit.
Where was Taharqa?
He was forced to flee south to Thebes, abandoning the north. Esarhaddon naturally celebrated this triumph on a victory stele.
The one showing Taharqa's son kneeling.
That's the one. Ushankuru, bound and kneeling before him, a chilling image of Assyrian dominance.
But Taharqa wasn't done yet, was he? Even after losing Memphis and his family.
He was not one to give up easily. Incredible resilience. Despite that crushing defeat, he rallied his forces, advanced north again, and remarkably recaptured Memphis.
No way. He took it back.
He did, once again challenging Assyrian authority. But this act of defiance prompted a brutal response from Esarhaddon's successor, Ashurbanipal.
Ashurbanipal, even more ruthless.
Reigned 669-631 BCE, arguably even more so than his father. Around 667 BCE, Ashurbanipal led a new massive invasion. He defeated Taharqa yet again and drove him definitively back to Nubia.
So Taharqa finally retreats to Kush.
Yes. He died there in 664 BCE, but the conflict still wasn't over.
Who took over?
Taharqa's successor, Tantamani, made one final valiant attempt to regain control of Egypt.
He tried again. After all that.
He did. Advanced north and briefly retook Memphis, a true act of defiance against the Assyrian behemoth.
But that must have provoked Ashurbanipal beyond measure.
It did. This bold move provoked the final and most devastating Assyrian assault. In 663 BCE, Ashurbanipal's army marched deep south. They bypassed the usual targets.
And went straight for
Thebes, Egypt's ancient religious capital, and they brutally sacked the city.
Sacked Thebes, Karnak, Luxor.
Unimaginable devastation. The spiritual heart of Egypt for millennia, reduced to ruin. Treasures plundered, population terrorized. That single event sent shockwaves throughout the entire ancient world.
That must have been the end for Kushite rule in Egypt.
It was, undeniably, the definitive end.
So what happened next?
In the aftermath, the Kushite kings completely withdrew to their power base in Napata back in Nubia. They never again regained control of Egypt.
And the Assyrians, Did they rule Egypt directly?
They found direct rule from distant Nineveh impractical and costly, so they opted instead to establish native Egyptian vassal kings to govern the land for them.
Vassals, like puppets.
Pretty much. One of these vassals was Necosest of Sais in the Delta, and it was his son, Samtik-Meres, who would eventually manage to expel the last vestiges of Assyrian influence.
And founded his own dynasty.
Exactly. Samtik founded the 26th dynasty, the Sate dynasty, ushering in a new, purely Egyptian era.
So, looking back at the 25th dynasty's fall, it wasn't really about internal problems.
No, the fall wasn't a sign of internal decline or inherent weakness within the Kushite Empire. It was the direct consequence of a head-on collision with the most formidable military machine of its time.
And the fact they could challenge Assyria, even beat them initially.
It underscores their immense power and global importance. They were a major power on the world stage, not some marginal kingdom. Their downfall was a true clash of superpowers that reshaped the entire political map of the ancient world. They weren't just foreigners, they were a significant force.
The silent erasure. A campaign of damnatio memoria.
Okay, so the military might of the Assyrians ends Kushite rule in Egypt, a dramatic end. But their defeat was swiftly followed by something arguably even more insidious, right?
Yes. A deliberate and systematic campaign to erase their very existence and legacy from historical memory.
This damnatio memoria, condemnation of memory.
Exactly. It aimed not just to forget the Black Pharaohs, but to deny their very existence and legitimacy.
Was this a common practice in Egypt?
It was an official, intentional practice, yes, well known throughout ancient Egyptian history. Used against rulers deemed heretical, illegitimate, or just inconvenient.
Like Hatshepsut, Akhenaten.
Those are the most famous examples, yeah. And the objective wasn't merely to destroy physical images or names on monuments, it went deeper.
How so? What was the belief?
In the deeply held Egyptian belief system, a person's name and image were considered absolutely essential for their spirit, their life force to endure in the afterlife.
Ah, so erasing a name
was an act of profound spiritual violence, akin to denying them eternal existence. And the archaeological evidence that the 25th dynasty suffered such a comprehensive and targeted campaign is, well, it's overwhelming and undeniable.
And this evidence is found all over.
Across numerous sites throughout the Nile Valley. It paints a chilling and undeniable picture of organized destruction. Almost like someone went through with a checklist of what needed to be obliterated.
What's some of the clearest evidence?
One of the clearest and most pregnant examples comes from Denjile, deep within Sudanese territory, long after the Kushites had retreated from Egypt.
What did they find there?
Archaeologists discovered a truly massive 1-ton granite statue of Taharqa himself, along with statues of two of his successors, Sankamaniskan and Aspelta.
And they were.
All of them had been deliberately smashed into many pieces. Some show clear hammer marks. The sheer scale and intentional nature of this damage, even deep in their homeland,
suggests it wasn't random vandalism.
Exactly. It points to an organized, systematic effort to destroy the very symbols of Kushite royal power.
And we already mentioned Piye's victory stele.
Right, a particularly blatant act of iconoclasm. On the very monument celebrating his conquest, the image of Piye himself in the lunette was partially chiseled away.
Just his face and crown, you said?
Primarily, yes. His face, crown, the double uraeus, the symbols of his kingship, while the rest of the scene remained largely intact. It's an unmistakable act of damnatio memoria.
Designed to symbolically reverse his triumph, undermine his legitimacy.
Precisely. Even on the very monument celebrating it. A powerful visual testament to the desire to erase his legacy.
Were there more subtle ways they did this?
Yes. A more subtle yet equally effective form was the usurpation of monuments.
Usurpation, like taking them over.
Exactly. This is where a ruler's names and titles, meticulously inscribed in their cartouches, those oval rings around royal names, were painstakingly erased, and then replaced by the name of a later ruler.
Ah, so they literally wrote over them.
Yes. This practice was applied extensively to Kushite monuments throughout Egypt. It not only eliminated the predecessor from the record, but allowed the new ruler to claim credit for their constructions.
Stealing their legacy.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Historical identity theft on a grand scale. Very clever.
You also mentioned destruction by fire.
There's evidence of that too, indicating perhaps repeated attempts to obliterate their memory. Though it's a later event, Taharqa's temple at Kawa, the one he vowed to rebuild. It was plundered and burned in the 3rd century CE. This shows later waves of iconoclasm, maybe related to regional conflicts or the rise of new religions impacting the area. The campaign of forgetting seems to have had echoes.
And there were caches of deliberately broken statues found.
Yes. Academic studies, particularly detailed analyses by scholars focusing on Nubian sites like Jebel Barkal, have identified entire caches of deliberately broken Nubian royal statues.
Found at their religious heartland.
Exactly. These shattered fragments were often systematically buried, which further strengthens the theory of an organized, comprehensive destruction campaign meant to hide or remove these symbols from public view and memory.
It wasn't just neglect or decay.
No, this wasn't just happenstance. It was a concerted, deliberate effort to wipe them from the historical landscape.
Okay, the evidence seems overwhelming, which leads to the critical question. Who did this? Who are the perpetrators and why? Who held the chisel?
The evidence points very, very strongly to their direct successors in Egypt.
The Psamtik-Assytics and his descendants.
Exactly. The native Egyptian pharaohs of the 26th dynasty. Remember, after the Assyrians withdrew, Psamtik established his dynasty in Sais in the Delta.
And they faced a huge challenge, right? Unifying the country.
An immense challenge. Unifying a country ravaged by war, rebuilding the economy, and crucially reestablishing a strong, independent Egyptian identity after over a century of Kushite rule and then Assyrian occupation. They needed a clean break, a new narrative.
Is there specific evidence linking the Sabites to this erasure?
The clearest, most undeniable evidence comes from the reign of Psamtik II, ruled 595 to 589 BCE.
What did he do?
This pharaoh led a major military campaign deep into Nubia, reached and plundered Napata, the former Kushite capital, specifically targeting sites like Jebel Barkal and the royal necropolis at El Kuru.
So an invasion and destruction.
Crucially, yes. This military invasion was accompanied by a powerful ideological assault. It was during, or immediately after, his reign that the systematic erasure of Kushite kings' names and images from monuments across Egypt was extensively and thoroughly carried out.
So it wasn't just battlefield looting in Nubia, it was a coordinated campaign back in Egypt, too.
Absolutely. A coordinated campaign of cultural warfare.
What was the motive? Just revenge.
The Satan motive likely wasn't just vengeance, although there might have been some animosity from past conflicts. It seems it was primarily a calculated, pragmatic act of nation building.
Nation building through erasure, how does that work?
To legitimize their new dynasty and unify a diverse populace, the Satan pharaohs needed to create a historical narrative where they were the true, pure, and unbroken restorers of Egyptian civilization.
Which
absolutely necessitated severing all ties with their immediate predecessors, the Kushites, who were now conveniently reclassified and propagandized as foreigners and illegitimate rulers.
Rewriting history.
Completely. By erasing the 25th dynasty from monuments, they were positioning themselves as direct, unbroken successors to the glorious Old and Middle Kingdoms, skipping over that entire century of Kushite rule as if it never happened.
Creating an illusion of continuity.
Exactly. An ambitious attempt to cleanse the historical record and fabricate an illusion of unbroken native Egyptian continuity, presenting themselves as the rightful saviors of Egypt.
It's important to differentiate this from what the Assyrians did, right?
Yes, very important. While the Assyrians were brutal conquerors, sacking cities like Thebes, carrying off spoils, Taharqa's statues ended up in Nineveh.
Their goal was different.
Their primary goal was subjugation, plunder, extracting tribute, demonstrating military might, not systematic ideological damnatio memoriae within Egypt itself, not in that specific Egyptian spiritual sense.
Assyrian destruction was an act of war.
While the Sate erasure was a political and spiritual manipulation of history.
And this erasure wasn't just physical, it happened in texts too.
It did, a testament to how comprehensive it was. Manetho's King List,
a key historical source, written much later.
Compiled in the 3rd century BCE by a Ptolemaic Egyptian historian. It conspicuously omitted important Kushite kings like Piye and Tantamani, despite their huge historical impact.
Just left them out. This textual removal perfectly complements the physical destruction. It shows a comprehensive, deliberate effort to eliminate the Kushite pharaohs from mainstream, accepted Egyptian history. A complete narrative rewrite. You know, there's a profound irony here, isn't there?
There really is.
The very intensity of this erasure campaign. It's almost the strongest evidence for the Kushites' impact.
Absolutely. You don't go to such extreme lengths, investing so much time, resource, effort into chiseling names from stone across an entire country, rewriting king lists to erase something insignificant or easily forgotten.
Right.
The Assyrian pharaohs felt such a comprehensive damnatio memoria was necessary precisely because the 25th dynasty's legacy was so deeply entrenched, so influential, that it was perceived as a genuine, enduring ideological threat to their new Scythite political project.
So it wasn't just casual neglect or even simple racism, though that might have played a part.
It seems it was primarily a calculated strategic political move to reclaim and reshape the narrative of Egyptian identity for their own ends. It speaks volumes about the power and significance the Kushites actually held.
Legacy and rediscovery, rewriting the narrative.
So despite these systematic, really determined attempts to erase them from history, the legacy of the Black Pharaohs endured. It wasn't completely successful.
No, it wasn't. Their influence persisted both through their lasting impact on Egypt itself and, importantly, the continuation of their own vibrant kingdom further south.
And their eventual rediscovery, the reevaluation in modern times. That's a compelling story in itself, isn't it? About how archaeology and critical history can unearth these suppressed memories.
It really is. The Sage Damnatio Memoria, despite its severity, ultimately failed to fully erase the 25th dynasty's influence. In fact, there's a strong argument that the cultural renaissance the Kushite kings initiated actually laid much of the groundwork for the very renaissance the Sates later claimed as their own.
How so? The Sage Renaissance is famous for looking back to older styles.
Exactly. The Sate Renaissance of the 26th dynasty, celebrated for its return to archaic art and architectural forms. Well, that was largely a direct continuation, and building upon the classicizing trends pioneered by pharaohs like Piye and Taharqa.
Ah, so the Kushites started it.
They were the ones who reintroduced pyramid building into the royal tradition. They meticulously revered ancient religious texts. They commissioned sculptures in those revered Old and Middle Kingdom styles. The Sayites simply continued this legacy.
Even while trying to erase the names of the originator.
Precisely. It was a continuity they tried very hard to disguise as a completely fresh, purely Egyptian start.
And losing Egypt certainly wasn't the end for the Kushites themselves, was it?
Not at all. Far from it. The kingdom simply retreated south, consolidated its power, and eventually shifted its capital from Napata,
Which had been plundered by Psamtik II.
Right. They moved further up the Nile to the more prosperous, perhaps more defensible, strategically located city of Meroe.
Meroe. That became a major center too.
Oh yes. The Meroitic kingdom flourished there for nearly another millennium, an incredible span of time lasting until around 350 CE.
Wow, another 1,000 years.
And they developed their own distinct writing system, the Meroitic script.
Which we still can't fully read.
Still largely undeciphered, unfortunately, but its very existence indicates a powerful, independent cultural development. They also forged a truly unique artistic and architectural culture, blending Egyptian influences with strong indigenous African traditions, created something entirely new.
So they remained a significant power.
A major regional power, yeah. Controlling vital trade routes stretching across Africa, actively interacting with the Greco-Roman world. It demonstrates a vibrant, continued existence and influence for centuries after leaving Egypt.
And you mentioned earlier that the Kushites acted as preservers of Egyptian culture too.
Yes, that's one of their most lasting and often uncredited legacies. A prime example is the Shabako stone.
Shabako, Piye's successor. What's the story there?
Well, Pharaoh Shabaka apparently discovered an ancient papyrus text. It contained a crucial Memphite creation story, one of Egypt's earliest, most important theological texts. But it was in a terrible state, literally falling apart.
Okay.
Recognizing its immense historical and religious value, Shabaka, a Kushite king, ordered the entire text to be meticulously carved onto a durable granite slab for permanent preservation.
He saved it.
He saved it. Thanks to his foresight, a priceless piece of Egyptian theology and history was saved from oblivion. It vividly demonstrates their deep reverence for Egyptian culture.
Showing their role not as destroyers, but as guardians.
Exactly. Guardians and preservers of a heritage they clearly came to view at least partly as their own.
So given all this, their power, their cultural impact, their role as preservers, how did the story of the 25th dynasty get so twisted, so misunderstood for so long in modern times? Before this recent reevaluation?
Well, that's a fascinating and frankly uncomfortable story about how contemporary biases can deeply shape our interpretation of the past.
Especially in early Egyptology.
Especially then. Pioneer archaeologists like George Reisner of Harvard University, working in the early 20th century, they interpreted their findings through a deeply entrenched Egyptocentric and, unfortunately, often racist lens.
What happened when they found evidence of sophisticated Kushite civilization? Pyramids, temples, art.
When confronted with this undeniable evidence, grand temples, pyramids, elaborate art that clearly wasn't crude imitation, Reisner and his contemporaries simply could not accept, or perhaps would not accept, that such achievements could have been made by Black Africans.
So how did they explain it?
He hypothesized instead that the Kushite ruling elite must have been a light-skinned branch of Libyans or Egyptians who had migrated south, and that their culture was merely a poor secondary imitation of true Egyptian culture.
Wow. Just completely dismissing their originality.
Completely. And this view, unfortunately, effectively reinforced the historical erasure initiated way back by the Sarites. It relegated Kush to being an unimportant backwater periphery rather than the significant, powerful, and innovative civilization it clearly was.
So how did that change?
Thankfully, starting maybe in the latter half of the 20th century, a new generation of scholars began to systematically challenge these old, prejudiced narratives.
Driven by new discoveries or new perspectives?
Both. New excavations at key sites like Kerma, combined with a critical reevaluation of Reisner's own meticulous records. He was a great excavator, just a poor interpreter in this case, and a more open-minded approach to African history generally. It all started to reveal a vastly different picture.
And what's the modern understanding?
Modern archaeology now recognizes Kush as a complex, powerful, and incredibly innovative indigenous African civilization, one that interacted with Egypt on an equal footing for much of its history.
As partners, rivals.
Trading partners, formidable military rivals, and eventually, yes, as conquerors and legitimate rulers of Egypt itself. The narrative has rightly shifted from Kush being a mere backwater to a dynamic, influential center of power in its own right, a crucial piece of the ancient world puzzle.
And the story of the Black Pharaohs, the 25th Dynasty, it still captures public interest, doesn't it? Sometimes sparks debate.
It absolutely does, and sometimes controversy, precisely because it challenges those old, comfortable narratives. It forces us to reconsider conventional, often Eurocentric views of the ancient world.
Makes us question definitions of Egyptian versus African identity.
Exactly. The history of the 25th Dynasty vividly illustrates that ancient boundaries weren't rigid lines on a map. Cultures flowed into each other, mixed, adapted, created new and complex forms of power and expression. It's a powerful reminder of how fluid and dynamic the ancient world truly was.
Outro. So we embarked on this deep dive into a chapter of history that was deliberately forgotten, maybe even deliberately erased. And what we found was, well, an incredible story.
It really is a story of immense power, of vibrant cultural revival, fierce conflict on a global stage, and then the systematic act of historical suppression.
And the Kushite pharaohs, they were far from being simple foreign occupiers, weren't they?
Not at all. They were deeply engaged participants in Egyptian tradition, driven by what seems to have been a genuine mission to restore its religious and cultural glory.
Their unique blend of Egyptian classicism and that bold Kushite innovation, it created a rich, sophisticated cultural legacy. You see it in the double uraeus, those powerful realistic portraits.
Absolutely. And their downfall wasn't due to internal decline or weakness. It was a direct confrontation with the superpower of its age, the Assyrian Empire.
But maybe the most profound challenge they faced came after their military defeat.
Yes, that systematic damnatio memoria waged by their Seleucid successors. And as we discussed, the very scale and intensity of that erasure campaign speak volumes.
Right. It tells you just how deep the Kushite pharaohs' influence must have been, how potent their legacy was perceived to be.
It had to be systematically dismantled because it posed a real ideological challenge to the new narrative the Seleucids were trying to build.
And that, for us, I think, is one of those powerful takeaways from this story. It's a profound testament to the power of archaeology, of critical historical scholarship.
Definitely. By looking past those entrenched biases, by asking new questions, by meticulously re-examining the evidence, we can unearth suppressed memories. We can recover crucial chapters of African history, of world history, that were deliberately hidden.
The story of the Black Pharaohs really challenges us, doesn't it? To rethink our notions of identity, empire, legacy. It reveals an ancient world far more interconnected, dynamic, and diverse than traditional narratives often acknowledge.
So maybe the thought to leave our listeners with is this: what other forgotten histories might be out there waiting for us to uncover them? And what might those hidden stories teach us about ourselves today and about the narratives we choose to accept or question?
This story isn't over. Subscribe to carry it forward.